Previously on Peace of Mind.
It probably seems maybe to others that, this taking on of Buddhism might be like a radical thing. It doesn't, nothing was an indicator that this would be where I would, steer my spiritual life as I got older. But yet, when we talk about like the marks of existence, or we talk about the Four Noble Truths, or we talked about the practicality of the Noble Eightfold Path, right action, right speech, right livelihood, these kinds of things that we do with our behavior. Buddhism is so much less radical and more just like innately what I've always sort of believed and kind of expressed in my life before I could give it name.
Really cool to see that how interconnected things are. And there's not a single thing that you can look at where it's not like that. And that's what brings so much awe back into your life.
Peace of mind, a world so kind.
Hello there, YouTube Sangha. Welcome to another episode on the channel of Peace of Mind. I'm Dharma Peace.
I'm Dharma Ocean.
I'm Dharma Sense. Welcome to our channel.
I was thinking along the lines of a steps along the path kind of episode, just to tell everybody what we've been up to, how we've been keeping a peace of mind through, the world's trials and tribulations. Not to dwell on anything, just to kind of, talk about our practice and how it improves our lives.
I live alone, and I have for the past 3 years, but I don't ever get lonely. I don't ever feel that way. It's just me and my cat here in the apartment, but I go outside and I'll see like creatures around and I'll be so happy and I'll be like, oh my God, like the birds, and like sometimes I'll see like an alligator or an otter in the ponds near my apartment and I just marvel at it. Oh my God, these beautiful creatures, and there are turtles out there, and it just feels so good to be out in nature and just soak in all of that wonder. It just brings you to life. And sometimes it sounds so corny, but like when I'm here alone in my apartment, I'll just be like, I'm alive! and it's just an exclamation to myself about how happy I am to not be so unhappy like how I might have been in the past, or being so anxious and depressed about certain things, and in my head about, I don't have this or I don't have that, but I have everything. I have everything I could ever want, and it's right before me.
If you could just be happy to be alive, I mean, that's the greatest wealth in the world, I think, being content with your own life.
Yeah, indeed. But how did we get here? Like, how did this come to fruition,
Well, it's like the Carl Sagan thing, right? Where like the universe that has the ability to reflect upon itself. Like we're made of the SAR stuff, and we get to contemplate it. And how lucky are we to have that opportunity?
Would you say that is like karuna? That is the self-love, then transfers into and transforms into compassion and other regarding like abodes of the mind? Is that, you know what I mean? Is that what that is?
I mean, are you asking like in terms of like the 12 links of interdependence, like how we got here, kind of thing?
Well, I mean, like more
we're grasping our desire. We're here basically because we wanted to be.
What I mean is like what you guys are describing is a sense of suchness, right? That suddenly the interbeing of it all, it becomes. It's hard to explain, but it's almost like the mundane is somehow super mundane, right? It becomes super like interesting and super immersive, and it inspires, and it makes
That's
us.
a good way to put it. The mundane becomes super mundane.
Mm-hmm.
That's a really good way to put it. The other day I was going for a walk, and usually I have a daily walk that I like to go on just to get some exercise because I work a desk job. But I was going for a walk around this pond in my apartment complex, and I saw this tree, and I was just like I'm going to go hug that tree. It sounds so corny, I know, but I couldn't help myself. I was like, that looks like a good tree. I went up to that tree, and I hugged it, and I noticed, this tree has ants on it. So I'm just watching the ants crawl up and down it, and I'm looking at the tree and the bark. I'm like, wow, the bark has so much detail. Holy crap, dude. If you just observe it, it comes to life. It just shows itself right to you. Just, wow, oh my God, it has so much detail and color that I didn't notice if I didn't go up to it and pay attention. You know
Hmm.
what I mean?
Yeah, it's a little microcosm in it, and that
Yeah.
microcosm is indicative of the macrocosm. You look there, you see the complexity, and yet the simplicity. It's like almost it's so paradoxical, and yet when we gain this mindfulness and this attention to the details and the interconnected, like the interbeing of everything, as to use Thich Nhat Hanh's term, um, it's almost like breathtaking, right? It's like this is
Really,
fractal
it's
in
about
nature. It's like,
perspective. It's really about perspective. Like what you're saying is when you went and were able to look at the tree and look at it, with that perspective and that attention, mindful attention, taking the time to really truly observe. Um, and then you're able to see the beauty, and aware of the impermanence of that, cherish the moment.
Yeah. So you hit on something quite important, right? Which is like paying attention and observing it deeply. Because if you're too distracted by your mind when you're out and about, letting it constantly dominate you, thinking about all these repetitious cyclical thoughts,
hmm,
it takes you away from being able to experience that beauty. And because I used to be just like that, always absorbed in thoughts, and it still happens to me, but at least I'm becoming aware of it and getting away from it a little bit more.
yeah,
But when you can kind of quiet the monkey mind down a little bit, the world just reveals itself to you so effortlessly, and you don't have to try to find meaning in anything anymore. It just reveals itself and says, hey, here I am. I've been here waiting for you to recognize me the entire time. You finally snapped out of it, you know?
yeah.
And it feels really cool to be in that moment. Of course, you always go right back. You go right back to thinking again, of course. It doesn't last that long.
Right.
But that experience of just being, wow, I'm so at peace, and like looking at the beautiful sky, and like at 6:30 in the morning, I'm going for a walk, and there are bats flying around. I'm like, oh my god, bats, what? And like the pink sky as the sunrise, it's like, this is so cool, man.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like,
Yeah,
for sure.
me and my childhood buddy, we had him on the show before, but we talk about. I guided him through like vipassana meditation, deep insight meditation, and when we came out, we had a long conversation about it, and at some point he was like, "It's like." You're getting like a 4K TV or something like
Mhm.
before you were just watching everything in like lower pixels or whatever, and then all of a sudden you have an
Yeah.
HD TV to life, right? And that is like, so shout out to my buddy Nick
that's a
out
really
there.
interesting way of describing
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Well, it's
You go from black and white to technicolor.
yeah.
Yeah, everything just feels alive. It feels
Mhm.
so like rich and bold and deep and meaningful all of a sudden.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and when it's like it was like one of my favorite shows. Everybody knows Uncle Iroh these days. I don't know if you guys know Uncle Iroh, but he said,
Yeah,
you know,
Avatar: The Last Airbender, of course.
yeah, like he said, when basically when you're living in darkness and you're seeking darkness, that is all you will ever see, right?
Yeah.
And, I've been really meditating on this contrast, this juxtaposition of light and darkness, actually, which to a lot of people in spiritual practice, when we get deep into it, that just seems very like absolutist, very like binary, yin and yang, that kind of thing. But and we're like non-dualistic people, right? We don't think in terms of dualism, but there is a kind of when we talk about a process, when you have like a sublimation of things, like you got a synthesis, an antithesis, or sorry, a thesis, antithesis, synthesis, right? Where you're like this, therefore that, therefore this, and then so what I'm trying to describe is the process, right? Where you there's a point in our lives where we live, for lack of a better term, unskillfully, right? Like where we all can sort of grasp at that. This kind of endeavor in religious studies is called metanoia, which means like at some point you've had some sense of guilt and regret about the way you were living your life, and then you decide and you have like this will to change things and to transform your way of life. And then so that's where like this whole thing about light and darkness and light comes from for me, where I'm like, maybe it's not so rudimentary to talk about it in that way, as long as that we have everything like as long as we have all the prerequisites in order, which is that we're not talking about extremes, we're not making gross generalizations, we're not about ourselves or others. And you know what I mean? Like right now, I'm just kind of talking about like path to recovery and that kind of thing. Like um, again, that sort of adventure of metanoia where you decide to change your ways and to sort of reform your life. You know, and uh,
You can only suffer for so long before you realize I've just got to do something about this. You
yeah,
know, I mean, but that suffering winds up being so valuable, right? Because if it weren't for it, I wouldn't have understood the better way to live. I wouldn't have had the transformative process of being able to really appreciate my current way of life. Because now I feel like I live so much better and healthily. You know, I eat good, clean food and I wake up early and meditate in an effort to really take care of myself. Whereas I didn't really do that kind of thing, you know, back in college, and I was kind of depressed, and I was drinking a little more than I probably should,
hmm,
staying up really late, and you know,
yeah,
but I just don't really do any of that stuff anymore, and I really take care of myself, especially mentally, you know.
yeah.
No
So
mud,
you
no
have to put a
lotus.
lot of, sorry,
No mud, no lotus.
exactly. And so another expression is the sword that goes through the fire comes out stronger, something along those lines.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, that suffering winds up teaching you, oh, wait a second, I'm actually a cause of a lot of the suffering, and by changing my own habits, by changing my behavior, I can become a happier person.
Indeed, yeah.
That was the key for me for everything is moving from the idea of a higher power is going to fix me to I am 100% accountable for my own actions.
Indeed, yeah.
Oh my God, well said. So
I,
and granted, I did come from, I do have some roots in Christianity. So my criticism of this is not out of hatred,
Yeah, I'm not,
but
and
yeah,
I don't want to say that other people's reliance on that is wrong. It's just what worked for me.
yeah, yeah. Well, recently I've actually been contemplating a lot about Christ, and he's factoring into my book as well, because there's a lot in the gospel that could Buddhists could learn from. Not to say that we need to you know go back to Christianity or none of that, but what I mean is like that there's a lot of like parables, lots of lessons there that could help us even just communicate Buddhism in general with non-Buddhists and sort of say like
I think there is Buddhism in the Bible.
right,
It's just not called Buddhism, you know.
yeah,
I mean, you could say that from the Christian perspective too. There's probably Christianity and Buddhism. It's like
indeed, especially
different. It's like
Mahayana,
two
yeah,
sides of the same coin. We're talking about the same thing here.
I have a
exactly,
very good friend, and I've shared this with you before, Peace. A very good friend of mine who daily sends me a Christian passage that he adds commentary to, but he writes this little thing and he sends it out to a blast, like a group of people,
right,
me
right,
included, on a daily basis. And there's so much overlap. It's unbelievable in terms of like just this stuff about leading a good life and what's wholesome and not, and and just a lot. And I just have to bite my tongue a lot, like
Oh, for sure, yeah.
responses. Like I always want to like point out how things are the same, or like the Buddhist perspective is this, or like
mm,
you
For
guys are,
sure, yeah.
like. But it's just it's interesting to me about how much a lot of the concepts are very very similar,
mm.
just
And
attributed to different sources. I think a lot of the times.
there's a lot of norms throughout human history that just crop up, and it's like from one uncontacted tribe to another. Back in like antiquity, you would find like one made a similar statue to the other, or or like had certain like sun cults, or there's a common tradition and heritage of being a human being, and I believe that is deeply like spiritual and fundamental to our existence. And the fact that these mores come up in common between cultures, there's probably some exchange. There's probably some like yeah, like some trade However, I just think that it crops up because we're human and we have a common experience, and that should inform
Yeah,
our.
and but that's what gives rise to compassion. Is that because I'm a human and I know what it's like to, I know what the other person is experiencing, and I want to help if I can,
Yeah,
at least a little bit, help to relieve that suffering. Just because I know that there's suffering in the world, and I don't want it to be that way. If I can help
exactly.
it.
Yeah, yeah. Like
Right.
whether you're German, or you're somebody living in Tibet or somebody living in West Africa, that everyone has like a common. It's like the Buddha, you know essentially said that we're all seeking the same thing, like in the Brahma Viharas, right, where the abodes of the mind. Those tell us what our needs are, like almost like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, where we all need compassion, we all need sympathetic joy and loving kindness and equanimity. Those things are kind of essential, especially in families. Where that, I believe, is what we all seek when we have a wholesome mind state. And then, like, things that are not that wind up being unwholesome, for lack of a better phrasing. It winds up steering us in certain behaviors that wind up, um, you know, meriting bad karma, essentially. you know, if our motivations are not chanda, chanda being the basically the wholesome desire, because there's like tanha, which is the unwholesome desire, which is craving, right? And then chanda, which is the wholesome desire to do something that is wholesome, you know. And
I think
Okay, that's actually interesting. I didn't know that had a. Of course it does, but like this is my first time encountering the opposite of tanha.
mm, yeah,
So that's very good to know. Because when we a lot of times people mistake, oh the destruction of desire. It's like what I'm not gonna want anything. Well, you're gonna want water when you're thirsty. Like you're gonna want something.
mm,
So it's good to know that that actually has a term in Pali that I
right,
can
and
now understand better. So thanks.
once
no
you
problem.
achieve nirvana,
Yeah, yeah.
the
Well,
desire
and
to achieve enlightenment, it's a desire, right?
that's what made the
Interesting
Buddha.
though. Before we move on, though, I want to touch back just on one thing that you said earlier. It made me think of something again. I've been thinking about this, and it's just a weird sort of thing. But you're talking about like sun cults and things like that, where I think back to like early evolution when we're like Australopithecus and we're evolving, along these lines, and mental capacities are getting larger.
Mm,
But if you're just walking along with your buddy and they're all animated in a minute and then they're not the next, what happened? Where did you go? The body is still there, but the animating force is not. And so I think that alone, that mystery of where did Ocean go? Ocean, the physical form is here, but the thing that when the part that he was laughing and telling that great story, and that part is gone. And what is that? And where did it go? And why? And then we get these things called religions, or these cults that grow up that try to explain it all,
mm,
right? And it gets encoded in our DNA and it gets passed down through the ages, and it becomes things like that evolve into, I think, our emotions, into compassion for others, and you know stuff like it's to me, I love like causal and thinking about links back through the beginning of time, and how did we come to be able to even conceive of thoughts like this.
yeah, yeah. Um, well, and the thing is that what I want to add to that is that certain traditions are upheld because they communicate something common, in common. And now a lot of theists, quote unquote, in the sense of atheist, like they say, oh, we have morality and we have like a sense of right and wrong. Where do you get yours from? If you're not a theist, right? And that is such a sort of fallacious way of thinking, and it might sound strange from a Buddhist perspective, but it's a fallacious way of thinking because we should affirm people's humanity first and foremost. We should see that there's a common thread through all of humanity where morality and ethics and like the desire to be treated well, the golden rule, is always the case, right? Like it's in our interest, even in an evolutionary standpoint. That
But even something like compassion isn't exclusive to like humanity. Like
mm,
animals are compassionate towards even one another. Like I'm sure you've seen those videos where an animal runs and
oh
it
yeah,
gets a human to come back and rescue the his mate or
yeah,
his
yeah,
buddy
yeah,
in the net or something like that. That
yeah. There's
I
interspecies
think
compassion. Yeah.
it's encoded in sentient life.
Hmm. Yeah, and that's one thing that the Buddha had suggested to all of us is that we should pray for all sentient beings, right? Have compassion for all sentient beings. And again, I went on that whole thing about theist, atheist, whatever. But what I'm trying to the point is not about that debate. The point there, and I feel like I just want to make that clear, is that just seeing and affirming the humanity in people is very important. And also from a Buddhist perspective, the Buddha had said that never mind debates or sort of certain discourses about like the hereafter. Worry about the here and the now because that's what I'm here to teach you. But also, the Buddha said that if there is a sentient being that is achieving Buddhahood, it's humans, right? We're sort of like in that sort of mold. We're in that position where we understand dukkha, which is dissatisfaction, and we understand sukha, which is the cessation of suffering, essentially. And um, I feel like that's something that's in the end. That's why I consider myself like a quote unquote humanist, even as a Buddhist, because we got to think about our affairs as humans in a sense of like, yeah, we need to have stewardship over all sentient beings. We're kind of the only species on this planet that has the agency to do that. So it is incumbent upon us as our responsibility to have that stewardship. That's kind of
I
where
agree
I'm
with that.
going there. Took
Yeah.
me a minute, but
No, I agree with that.
what do you think, Ocean? Like,
Absolutely.
Yeah, I don't think it's necessary to believe in a god or be religious to have morality. I think that is not something I think that is grounded in much wisdom. Because if you, I mean, even at the very earliest of age, like if you look at kids, like 4 or 5 years old, they still have a lot of compassion and they can recognize right and wrong,
yeah,
but they haven't been ingrained into any kind of doctrine,
yeah, yeah,
at least not yet, I guess. But like even though I'm a religious person because I'm Buddhist, I don't have that many opinions about like a deity, but I still feel like I have very strong morals, and I know the difference between what's right and wrong based on how it will make me feel or how it will make the other person feel. So it's more about like morality in Buddhism is more about what causes suffering. That is the thing that is the wrong deed, and what will cause happiness. That is the good deed. And so
yeah,
really, it's about the experience of whether they're suffering or not that will determine the morality of the deed, and that has nothing to do with a god or religion, any of that stuff.
yeah.
Right.
I would agree. And but again, that's not to say that like religious teachers from other paths don't have anything to tell us about morality. Many of
Of
them
course,
have lots to tell us, right? And we listen. That's the thing is it's this is a democracy, guys. I don't know if you knew, but but you know it's part of the path for all of us. And actually, I want to just say that um, since this is a steps along the path, that whatever that path is, Ocean, you like to say that it's like the path is not a straight shot, right? You're not going from beginning to end. You're going all over the place.
oh yeah,
Yeah, and whether you're straying or whether you're still trying to find that path, right? I
yeah,
I encounter people from all walks of life, and from all walks of life, from all over the world. Like when I was in Japan, I had a large, and I actually wrote about it recently about this large expatriate community that I belong to in Kyoto, and and it's just amazing that we all shared this sangha, for lack of a better word. It really was a sangha, even though it wasn't centered around Buddhism. Um, we all just had this common experience together, and we were converging on the same path together. And I hope that, you know, everybody, listeners, can feel that sense of like togetherness, that we were all in it together. We're all suffering the same life and we're all enjoying the same life. And there's always that potential to do what's wholesome and do what's unwholesome. But we would hope to stay on the path and to do what's wholesome, whether that means walking with Christ or walking with your family or with Carl Sagan or whoever, what have you. It doesn't even need to involve anyone. Like, what I'm trying to say is like you don't have any sort of, I'm guessing that you don't have any need to um, go arm in arm with somebody. You can actually just stay the course. Um,
Yeah,
almost like
well,
a take a
the reason why I feel, and I kind of agree with you. The reason why I
yeah.
feel like I'm able to do that, to be motivated, even though I don't really uh, anyone I'm living with or anyone I'm interacting with every day who can help keep me accountable. I have to keep myself accountable.
Mm.
And so in that sense, I guess you're kind of right. I'm like walking it alone, but I don't actually feel that way.
Uh-huh.
I feel like, and again, I sound so corny, but it's so true that like I feel like I'm walking with Buddha and Thich Nhat Hanh and with my ancestors. I feel like they got my back, and I feel so supported by these basically immaterial things, these beings of the past. I feel supported by them, even though they're no longer
Yeah.
with me. But even though I go to our home temple every Sunday, that's only one day of the week in order to get my spiritual sustenance, and I have some other meditation groups that'll come and see, once a week or so, but most of the time I'm on my own, in kind of a solitary practice.
Mm.
But I still feel connected with the rest of the people that came before me. Like, without the Buddha having started these teachings, without Thich Nhat Hanh being a big influence for me, without all the other Zen masters that came before him, I wouldn't be able to have this profound encounter with the practice or with the Dharma. So I
Yeah.
feel like I am supported and I am walking hand with the Buddha. And sometimes it really feels like I'm like a little kid and he's like, my guardian of some kind. Like, am I following him?
Yeah, it reminds me of
I get that. Yeah, I totally get that. I
yeah.
feel supported in the same way in the lineage like that, like what you're talking about. Um, Also, I feel very much, since I believe in the concept of karma, that very much kind of connects me to the practice because I'm always kind of aware of the consequences of my actions, or maybe, more so mindfully than I was previously in my life. And so um, I'm trying. I fall and I fail constantly, and I get triggered, and my emotions will, and then I have to
Mm.
but I bring myself back. I don't let it take me down to where it's irrecoverable.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, and so I feel like my actions are always kind of, not that I'm being judged by some outside, but always, I better not say that wrong thing. There's gonna, or I want to sort of, I feel like I've accumulated a lot of bad karma. And so I'm trying to accumulate a lot of good to counterbalance it. So
Yeah, we
that
We
kind of
can.
all
ties
do,
me to
yeah.
the practice, even though I might not make it to the temple every week. Or, it might just be a 1 day a week kind of thing. Still, I do feel connected through the lineage and just through the fact that karma will come and get me and find me because it never misses if I stray too much.
Yeah, I can only agree. Yeah, Shin, you probably feel, in a sense, you're almost like walking it alone.
There's probably so many sutras about that same phenomena, but about karma and how, experiencing consequences from your own deeds. But when you're out and about, let's say you're like, oh, like why don't I just take this or steal that, that cookie. It can't be that expensive. It's only, so and so. It's only worth so much. No one will see. But it's like there is someone seeing. It's you. You're seeing you do it. You are seeing yourself do something bad.
Yeah, that's
You know what I
really,
mean?
yeah, that is
Someone
awesome.
is watching.
Yeah. No, that is a remarkable insight because we do take account of our actions. We are holding ourselves responsible, whether we realize that or not. And again, that goes back to what I said earlier. That's hiriotapa, that sense of like that moral remorse, and
Yeah.
So if it's not strong within us, it's still there. It's like Thich
Right.
Nhat Hanh taught. Not just him. It's the course of interdependent co-arising, or like interbeing, that there's the seed consciousness, and there's seeds of accountability in all of us. There's seeds of integrity. There's seeds of all the wholesome seeds are there, and so whether we are aware of it or not, it could sprout up eventually, and then now it's like, man, I regret all those things I did and said and um,
I
thought
remember
even.
things that I did many, many years ago. I remember being
Yeah.
a kid, maybe 12 years old, and I was still, formulating what it really means to do a good or a bad deed. And I was stealing from the local convenience store, 7-Eleven, and I had done it maybe a few times. And again, it was not, super expensive. It was like Slim Jims and snack bars and stuff like that. I couldn't have stolen more than $30 or $40 in the few times that I'd done that. But after a while, I felt so guilty about it, knowing that I had done a bad deed. That I went there and I bought something cheap, maybe like a Slim Jim or Slurpee, something cheap. But I gave the cashier like $30 or $40, and she was like, "I don't know what to do with this. I can't accept way more than what this." And I was like, "No, just take it." And I ran out, and I was so ashamed of myself of what I'd done. And
Yeah.
it didn't really make much of an impact on the company. It was 7-Eleven. Come on, they're like, a
Yeah.
huge company. The
Yeah,
effect
they're a
probably was
multinational corporation. Yeah.
right. It probably wasn't a
Yeah.
very substantial effect, but it was enough of an effect on my own mind that I couldn't handle the guilt of knowing that I had just done something wrong and that I knew better. That was really what was killing me the most, is that I totally knew better and I was raised better.
Right, because
Really like
it
that.
changes your opinion of yourself. Because now you realize that you're a person that would do such a scummy thing like that. Like, oh, geez, I guess I'm
Makes
not
sense.
right.
Well, I
But you're right.
yeah,
Right, and you face
I
reality and
was.
like, God, I thought I was better than. The one thing I really love, and Roshi Jim, I can't remember exactly, but the precept of don't steal, don't take what's not freely given.
Yeah.
I like the putting it in that terms because if somebody's not handing it to you and saying here take it, if there's ever in doubt, I leave it alone. Like there's all kinds of opportunity for me in my work, especially like in a scene shop. There's all kinds of little cool stuff, and like nobody would miss me just putting a little drill tip into my tool, but nobody'd miss it, nobody would know, but I would, just like you said. So I don't do stuff like that,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
it'll haunt me forever. And I do feel like, I don't know if the concept of rebirth is a thing I've gotten far yet, but I'm not taking any chances. So
And I, as a teacher, I teach affirmations, right? And so instead of not, I do tell my students, don't take what is not given, right? Like
yeah,
did I give that to
maybe I
you?
heard it from you.
But at the same time, in the morning, we do affirmations, and then the affirmation is, I have integrity, right? And that is that is where, and I use that as a building block for all of this, right? Where they have a sense of accountability. They know that they're being watched. They're watching themselves. I wish, Ocean, man, that like that sort of the way that you encapsulated it was like you were watching yourself, and that I wish I had imparted to my students because they because that is also like a sense, that is a tremendous sense of self-awareness and situational awareness, that and presence of mind that ultimately I feel like leads to a peace of mind, right? So, um,
Yep.
yeah.
Everything that you do, whether it be big, little, or otherwise, it will make an impact, make an imprint in your consciousness. It
Mm-hmm.
will. And like I said, I stole maybe $30, $40. This was like 15 years ago, and I remember it. And I look back and think, dang, that was a really silly thing that I did. And what about all the other things I've done in my life, even if they were small? But of course, the big things too. I still think about conversations I had a year ago. They were hard and difficult, or I didn't act very responsibly or skillfully, and I still think about it. And sometimes, that can really weigh on you, especially for something big. So
Well,
having the awareness to be like, oh, wait a second, we're getting into that territory where I'm going to regret this a year from
Yeah.
that is when you should take a second to think, do I really want to do this?
Mm, absolutely. One thing I want to say that I feel like, and maybe this could be like the final word. If you guys want have anything you want to say, be my guest. Um, but I think that like when it comes to remorse, the hiriotapa, the kind of the sense of moral wrongness, I suppose, and regret. Luckily, the three marks of existence, it goes both ways, right? It swings both directions, the pendulum. It implies that, you know, not everything, not every pleasurable or not every favorable moment lasts forever. The same is true about the unfavorable, right? And like the sense of guilt that this too shall pass, right? And that eventually those things, the waters start to settle, you know.
Right.
For sure. Yeah, like I no longer feel guilty about some of the things that I've done. Instead, I see it more of like something that enabled me to learn better. And now
Yeah,
I don't I don't feel.
right.
When I'm sitting in meditation for 30 minutes every day and these things pop up, I'm like, no, like just I just want to breathe, man. I just want to breathe, you know? Or
Yeah, no, it's
I don't know.
I can only agree. And
Just
I'll do the
a
final word.
last little thought that's sort of been on my mind recently. And I think we've touched a little bit before, um, talking about like the Buddhist path is one of letting go in a sense and giving up. Like it's a path of liberation. So
Yeah,
you're letting go of your attachments, right? And they could be
Hmm.
letting go even of like your material belongings. Um, and it seems often that it's a diminishing, right? You're having to give up your creature comforts. You're having to give up, like it's almost like a negative type of expression of having to just let go. Whereas I've been finding that the more I let go, the more empowered and the more that I sort of like give things to goodwill, the more I feel love in my life, and the more that I kind of express vulnerability, the more I'm able to sort of feel compassion for other people. It's
yeah, I'm
because I
glad.
have been
Yeah,
thinking about those things because I've been feeling like just in today's world that it seems like the peaceful way and it seems kind of like the compassionate way might be viewed as sort of weak or ineffective or it's not having the kind of impact that is going to make a difference when the rest of the world might appear so cynical or so. And I think it's quite the opposite.
it's
I
the
think
opposite.
that
Yeah,
I think the more that you can express compassion for your neighbors, or even like Jesus Christ says, love your neighbor as yourself,
and, and your enemies.
and your
Pray for
enemies.
those who persecute you.
Yes, right.
Mm,
Metta for your enemy.
mm,
That really these are a source of strength, a source of power, and if anything is going to revolutionize the world, I think it would be through peace rather than through hatred and violence. So I just wanted just to add that as my last little thought.
well, I'm glad you
Thank
did
you.
add that.
Thank you for
And
that space
yes,
to say that.
and in all honesty, one thought that came to mind was that when it's like a picture that's out of focus, right? The things in our lives when we're not letting go of them, they're kind of in the way of what matters, what truly matters in the essential sense. Like we start to concern ourselves with this thing and that thing. Oh, it's the summer. I need to maintain a pool, or I need to like keep this in check. Like I need to like have the grill out. I need to scrape that thing, and then I have all this collection of stuff. And then I get mad when like my loved one is, uh, making a mess of the pool or doing something to the grill, or and those things are not. Those are very unessential when it comes to what really matters, which is loving kindness, compassion.
Yeah, like what matters more, your clean pool or the relationship with the family? And that sounds like
Right.
a really silly question, but people behave as if pool matters. How many silly arguments do we get into about the dumbest thing?
Yeah.
About an idea or an opinion you have, the other person doesn't agree, create this silly argument, and both of you walk away mad. And what really matters there is that, well, you had the opportunity to be a peacemaker and to establish a bond with someone, and you totally
Yeah.
blew it,
Well, those
you know?
things,
And we do
th-
that all the time.
those things are like, those are great ways, like a pool and a grill. Those are great ways to gather, right? And to bring people about. They want to hang around, and then we gather around the pool. We gather around the fire, the bonfire, so to speak. But when you start, when we surround ourselves with people, and we suddenly start to make the issue about the fire or the grill or the pool, or then we get upset with the other people, then we kind of lost the plot, which was in the first place to gather and to share our love and compassion, right?
I heard this amazing phrase, albeit from a minimalist documentary, of course, also a great practice. So what he was saying in this minimalist documentary was that you should use things and love people, not the other way around. And I thought that was quite profound because when you accumulate a lot of things and you have all these material desires, you get very attached to them. And if someone that you perceive is interfering with that, suddenly they become an enemy, and you lose your opportunity to
Right.
communication and trust and love and a bond. And it's because you care too much about your silly things that are just going to wind up being destroyed eventually anyway. Because eh.
Hmm. Yeah, no, the Buddha had implored us. He said, "Arrive at the essential. Know what is essential, and you will arrive at the essential. If
Yeah.
you have the essential in the focus, the essential is what you will have. But if we're again, so sense, thank you for bringing that up, because that I feel like that is an important lesson for all of us, and a reminder, a bell of mindfulness to us as well, um, us Buddhist practitioners. In any case, this has been a wonderful and timely reunion. Guys, gentlemen, I am so happy to have you, and um, privileged. So thank you so
Yeah, that's a
much.
lot of fun.
We can be three's manjushri, right? That's the Japanese saying. The three of us are together again. It feels um, just I just can't take it for granted. So thank you so much. This present moment is a beautiful, wonderful moment, as the Venerable Thich Nhat Hanh would like to say. So, to wrap it up, guys, again, if you made it this far, thank you so much, and sadhu 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 to you.
That is